that once I started recording. I've got the recording on now. We may still have a few more people coming in, but please make sure for these classes going forward, a couple things. One, that your camera is stationary. We don't want anybody getting vertigo trying to keep up with your camera going all over the place. Two, that you have headsets on so that it cuts down on feedback. And three, obviously, if you have kids or dogs or birds or gorillas, whatever, in the background, and it's a noisy background, it happens to us all. We can't avoid it from time to time. Just keep yourself on mute. It just makes it easier on me because I so suck at multitasking. But I want to welcome all of you guys here. I'm really excited to see some folks here for the first time, like Lori and Rosie. It has been a journey with trying to work out some of the bugs on the platform that we didn't even know existed until this week. So thank you, Lori, for your patience, and Rosie for your patience, and for us figuring it out. But I'm so excited about tonight. I am just going out of my mind. It just so happened that tonight's first class in the advanced course happened to fall on the busiest day that I've had in like 3 weeks, where I was booked back to back all day long. And all day, all I could think about was, I just have to be able to keep my energy going until the end of the day. And as it turned out, all of you carried me through the day. Melissa, how are you feeling?
I'm having a rough day, but just hearing everybody's voices while I was getting ready just kind of put me in such a happy space that the moment I'm feeling pretty good.
Good. I'm glad. But we're holding space for you, and hope that continues to unfold that way. So thanks. So guys, tonight, I'm going to go ahead. We still have 2 more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and keep the room open before I really dive in, because we did tell everybody that we wouldn't lock the doors until right on the hour. And there really aren't a whole lot of housekeeping things. So I'm going to get to Tara's question, which is semi-unrelated to this, but really applies to this because of how dopey I can be. Tara asked why, on some of the modules in the coaching class, why she wasn't able to comment. That's because I thought I was clever and clearly was not. In previous versions of the coaching certification courses that I've taught over the years, one of the things that I would do was give that instruction to comment and then physically turn off comments on those modules, so that you would have the experience of things going wrong. Well, this platform didn't allow me to turn it off, so I thought, oh well, it's pointless. But I'm glad I want to hear from everybody anyway, so I didn't modify that. And then I discovered that technically, if the videos appear in a lesson and not, or a section and not a lesson, sections don't have comments, the lessons have comments. So I really had turned it off. And the place where I turned it off wasn't in the coaching class, it was in here. So imagine teaching 5 classes, having 5 different classrooms and bouncing around in all of them all day long. I just didn't do a good job. I apologize. So Tara, when you watch the coaching class today, you'll see that what I actually wanted people to arrive at, and that'll apply for this too. So I'm just going to not try and be clever here. I'll just give full disclosure. Things, we got a couple more people coming in. Things in life don't always work out the way that we plan. And so I want everyone to kind of relax into the platform. You can't break the platform. So if you do something and it's not the right thing to do, the platform's still going to survive, and you're still going to survive, and your computer's still going to survive. So don't worry about breaking the platform. And if something doesn't work, just remember that we all have multiple ways of communicating with one another. So you can email me. or you can message me within the platform. The couple things I will say is I'd prefer that you not message me about a class or about technical issues with the platform on Facebook Messenger. And there are several people here that were in the coaching class who will probably never message me in their lives on YouTube or Twitter again after today. Alyssa's smiling because I know she's one of them. Because I told everybody during the class today, the reason I ask that is YouTube and Twitter and Facebook Messenger, I generally don't answer except on my downtimes. And my downtimes often include using the restroom. So because of the Parkinson's and the fact that my phone is a smaller phone, I don't like to do long-winded responses because it's hard to not to hit the right buttons, the right letters. So I'm very brief. And I don't want anybody to misinterpret the very brief as being disinterested or cold or crass or short, whatever that is. And my being autistic, I tend to be that way anyway, unintentionally. So if you have something that needs an answer, like you really want to talk about something, email me preferably or message me within the platform. So if I say, give me your takeaways, several of you have done this and I really loved and appreciated your responses. Message me by email and tell me what your takeaways are. And as we work out some of them, as I learn these platforms, because guys, the ladies that are here and guys that are here that are married to guys know how frequently, or I should say infrequently, men tend to look at instructions. So I know that there are probably instructional videos that tell me how to use this platform better. I also know that I probably will never watch them. So I would rather dig around and experience and experiment and because I know I'm not going to break anything. So I'm learning new features every week that still exist within the platform that I didn't even know were there. And so as we work those things out, feel free to email me. You're not ever intruding in my life because even if you picked up the phone and tried to call me, if it's not a convenient time, I'm not going to answer the phone. Or I'm not going to check a message, or I'm not going to, look at my texts. So you can't intrude in my life unless you broke in to the house. And even then, I would probably be so excited to see you, it wouldn't be an intrusion, either. But so I wanted to make sure everybody understood that. I want to also make sure that everybody takes the time to read the little instructions that I went over at the beginning of tonight before I started recording, so that we keep things really distraction free moving forward. So let's jump in. So I'm excited and welcome to week one. And it's just so good to see you guys, even though we've been doing these live weekly, open topic sessions. It's a different energy, a different vibe than what we have here right now. And I've missed this. I've missed being able to hang out in a class type setting. But let's talk about what you can expect, because this week will be a little bit different from all the other weeks, because we have the let's go over some of the guidelines kind of stuff. There's not really a topic for this week except for what to expect in the class. And I want a lot of feedback from you guys, which is how we're going to actually start things off this week. But in weeks going forward, so that everybody knows, there will be some weeks, not every week, but some weeks that there will be a little bit of an instructional or tutorial or lecture, if you will. And that'll always be recorded ahead of time. And the reason that we're doing it that way is because we do recognize that, some of the people who want to be here and struggle to be here when we get started have jobs. And because, especially if you're on the West Coast, getting here at 8 o'clock is 5 o'clock Pacific time. That could be a real challenge You might hit traffic or whatever. And I wanted to keep this fluid enough that folks who want to drop in, as long as they understand the guidelines, they got their headsets ready, they've got their camera in place, they're not going to disrupt by popping in the window. But I want the instructional part to be completely, distraction free. So I will, on the days when there's a topic there's some instruction, my commitment to you is I will get it on the site before Friday of the week prior. Most likely on Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe in some cases on Thursday. But if worst case scenario on the week of the 10th, for example, when I'm having my second COVID vaccination, that week I might not get the stuff done until Wednesday or Thursday, because I'm probably going to take a little bit of a breather. And so then when we come together, it'll give us a lot more time to be able to talk. I'm going to try, again, out of respect for everybody else's time, to make these discussion portions an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. There may be one or two times if a discussion is really just so big and we're going, I'll ask everybody's permission. Do you mind if we stick around? If you can't stay till the end, you got to get to work, you got to take care of the kids, you got to do whatever, just feel free to pop out. Nobody's going to be offended. We all understand. The only person that would be offensive is if I just decided in the middle, okay, I'm out of here and didn't tell you. Anyone else, I know that life gets in the way, stuff happens, and we all have schedules we have to keep. So how I want to start off tonight is, and if you're in a noisy background, don't unmute yourself until you're ready to talk. If you're not in a noisy background, feel free to unmute at any time, as long as you got headsets on. But what I want to hear from you guys, because not everybody followed those instructions where I said, tell me why you want to be in the advanced course. If you don't mind, I would love to hear from everybody that's here. Tell me in a short couple sentences, in the interest of time, because we have a great turnout, what it is that you're hoping to get from the advanced course. Anybody? I'm not going to call on you because there's too many people on the screen.
I'll
Okay,
go.
I'll go. Go ahead.
You can go. Okay. I would say part of what I would like, and I know I've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but is, there's so many things about myself from when I was younger, and seeing spirits, growing up in that haunted house, having different psychic occurrences, and there's all these random things in my connection with nature and animals, and I never had anybody to show me the way. So I tried to turn a lot of things off, and really was trying to learn things here and there throughout my life. So a lot of it for me was that I was making a promise to myself to not turn those things off or hide who I am. And so being here really, to me, feels like the perfect place, and it already has, in the first course, opened a lot of that up for me and made me understand certain things. And I guess that's mainly the core reason. There's so many other reasons too that kind of section out from that. But my main reason just has to do with getting to know myself and honoring the gifts that I've been given.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so it's Lori, and mine's very simple. I'm here for the information. I'm here for the knowledge. I'm so interested, and everything that I heard so far was just really great, and great things are happening as I'm putting into practice, and I'm loving hearing everybody's experiences. And I just think that we're real lucky to be able to learn this from you and from each other.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Tamara.
So I'm ready to be at the adult discussion table, carrying the family conversations forward in the family. And, you know, the advanced workings and what's next and what's beyond all the basics. I'm really excited to learn the next step, the next stage in the process. And I'm really not exactly sure what that's going to be. So that's even more exciting.
Right on.
Yeah.
And I swear when you hear what I have to say when I start, I did not coordinate with Tamara on what to say. That was not rehearsed. Anybody else?
I'll go.
Who's
I think
that?
it's Rose.
Okay, let's try to see who's talking.
I think I have a little bit of all of that. I kind of am feeling now that I don't know what I don't know. My practice is just a lot of, it's very eclectic, and I pull a lot of things from what works from what I hear. So I just like to always learn new things. So
Right
see
on.
where that goes.
Right on. How's the reconstruction or the renovation going?
Oh, a couple more weeks. We're almost
Yay.
there.
All right.
I really want my kitchen back.
I'll go.
Yeah, right.
I think for me, it's really like going deeper in and like getting my hands dirty, doing like the deep work for it. And also like just connecting with more people and like getting more involved in like just community. Because I feel like I've been missing a lot of the community aspects of things. And I feel like this is a really great community and family that we've found here.
Thank you. Awesome.
I'll go. It's Rebecca.
Yeah, Rebecca.
So for me, this was really important because I felt like after the first course, I kind of got a little lost and had to go back to what got me started in the first place to find that reconnection to the ancestors. And so I want to get out of this just more of a basis so that it doesn't continue to get lost, or that the ancestry continue to get lost for our growing family, for the next generation. So that's what I'm hoping to
Right on.
establish.
And what is the due date on that next generation appearing?
August 10th.
Yeah.
August
Cool.
10th.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank
I'll
you.
go.
Yeah, Alyssa.
Basically, I want to impress myself. Like, I want to do something that I can finally put myself out of the category of saying to people, I'm kind of new at this, before I like explain whatever it is that I'm going to explain. And also, I just missed everybody. So it's so great to be together again.
Right on. You were missed as well. Yeah, Annette.
Yeah, I think for me it's like a little of everything people said. The big kid table thing is a big visual, but I think for me it's very much the fact that that first level just improved my entire life and every element of my practice like tenfold. So I'm just like, okay, I'm so ready for the next, like, let's go. I'm hungry. So that's just like the feeling I'm having about it. So I'm so grateful for the family, la familia, to be here again. So
Right on.
I'll go next. I just don't like to miss a party. But in all seriousness, so much of this course has tied up a lot of the loose ends of my practice. Being a practitioner for 5 years now, it's really expanded my outlook of what I do. And so much of what this class has brought to me and I've incorporated, and also just being really kind of alone, other than kind of like Dominic and other people in the community, this has kind of made a community for me of people that I can connect with and learn from also. So, hot girl witch summer. So get started.
Yay, hot girl summer. Yeah, Dominic.
I'll go. So like this is like building upon the foundation of the first course, and it's helped me a lot in my personal practice, but also like with clients, like doing the malocchio cures and like incorporating certain practices has helped them a lot, and I've seen a difference with that. And I just want to say welcome to season 2 of the Real Housewives of Stregoneria. Here we go.
And Big Ange sends her love. Yeah, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I think, for me, my intention to be here is to kind of deepen my own practice. I think there were so many things. Surprisingly, for me, it was a lot of like the little things in the 101 course that really just transformed my mornings, especially. And what I'm hoping to get out of this, and I'm open to the experience of whatever it brings, but is more of like an applied understanding. So rather than it being like advanced or like going deeper, it's more of like I'm curious about like the applications. How can I bring this to my life? How can I integrate everything, as opposed to like a how-to. So I don't know if that's what this is, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And also, I didn't get to make a lot of the live discussions before because I am on the West Coast and my schedule's crazy. But I really would like to carve out time to feel a little bit more integrated into this community, because you're all so fascinating and wonderful, and as far as I can tell. So
We're glad you could be here.
thank you.
I'd like to echo what Jessica said, and because this will all be very new for me in terms of the fact that I joined off cycle after the first class had already begun. And so this will be my first opportunity to join the live classroom sessions. And I'm really excited to commit to it in terms of now having a regular schedule where I join classes, and I think that it will just be all the more impactful for me by being able to share it with you. And I'm hoping to really personalize the lessons, and I know that this is going to be a longer time frame, but will allow me to incorporate it into my life, and I think walk away with really lifelong lessons and practices rooted into my life.
We're so happy to have you and your mom here. It's so exciting. I mean, you've been here, but you've been here in the background, and to have you physically in the room, just is such a delight, because you're going to find, I'm sure you got a sense of how wonderful all this community is, but I only got the sense of how wonderful you and your mom are, and now everybody gets to share that. So it is. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Thank you for that. And Jim and Melissa, I think you are and Ellen are the only three that we have not heard from. Do any of you want to share anything?
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for the warm welcome that I've received since I've joined the platform, and it truly feels like a family. If anybody has had a working group before, that close-knit connection, I feel that with so many of you already. And this platform and this group and everything that we're doing has really helped me. I relate everything back to gardening, has really helped me to focus back on the roots and making sure that the soil is healthy. There's so many distractions when you're dealing with the craft. You'd like to learn about tarot, you'd like to learn about crystals and, shiny things over here. I think we're all like cats a little bit that way. You play with a string over here and we'll chase it. But this has really helped me to focus back on those family traditions that are so important. And the synchronicities between this and my own family tradition is amazing to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's amazing to me too. I thank you for that, for helping us to see these synchronicities. And I will tell you that Jim will take all of that back if you pronounce the word Appalachian. And I'll probably be the first one to do that. Ellen, I see you unmuted.
Yeah.
For me, it's a continuation of the basics, and I want to continue to learn and grow with my family and my community here, because you're the only community I have in this realm of magic and everything. So it's really important to me to continue, keep going, and keep finding my way
Right on.
with all you.
We're glad you're here. Nikki, I saw you unmuted.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say how much gratitude I have for you, John Michael, and everyone in the class. I mean, you all are just amazing. And I look forward to every single one of these discussions that I get to be a part of so much. They just bring so much richness and beauty to my life. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a horrible cult leader. Despite what some may say, you know, we don't have the cars, we don't have the property, nobody's making bank. We aren't banging one another. But what I bring to the table, hopefully, is my heart, and you know, and maybe we'll pick out you know, some really great costumes for next season. Melissa.
So for me, a huge piece of this is what everyone said, and it's the community. And I don't think I understood how important that was before I decided to sign up. When I first signed up for Stregoneria 101, I was just really excited to finally find somebody teaching about this tradition, because mostly I was learning from my dead great aunt Millie, and I wanted a live person to tell me I wasn't crazy and that this was, you know, just to kind of help fill in some of the gaps. And so I really came for the knowledge, but really fell in love with the community. And like I said, just hearing everybody's voices in the background while I was switching out of farm mode into class mode, just filled me with joy and vitality, which was really wonderful. And then the other piece for me where I'm really excited about this class is because I'm hopeful that a lot of the weird stuff my aunt has me saying and doing, like kind of meshes a little bit more, like there's more of a place for that, because I get these little pieces of workings that I'm doing, but I don't understand why. Like, and I just feel like being able to, it seems like we'll be sharing our practices a little bit more and like really kind of resonating with each other and having that, you know, just that community space to really puzzle out this path that we're on, feels really exciting to me.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you went last, because that actually is the perfect segue. So taking what Tamara said and what you said and kind of using that kind of as a diving off point. This is, and for those who didn't understand the sitting at the adult table, early on in the 101 course, I talked about how my objective when putting together the program, since it had never been done before, and it was actually something that we were told not to ever do, don't ever teach outside the family, I decided I was going to teach that from a perspective of how we were taught as children, although I certainly don't think that by the time we got to the end of the 26 modules, that was definitely not material the children would have, but it was that kind of maturing process. And so, and kind of an organic way of the family tradition unfolding. And along the way, what I discovered as I was teaching it was that despite my original intention of strictly presenting the Italian tradition, and I intended to present not just my family's tradition, but the traditions that over the 20 years of research that I did in Italy, I discovered and picked up along the way as well. And we did that. But what I also noticed when I would look at these videos, because I went back during the interim period and looked at the videos to see what things I would want to change or improve upon or modify. And one of the things that was really clear to me was that it's impossible for me as a practitioner of magic for 51 years now to tease out anything that came from outside the Italian tradition. I mean, my mother's not Italian, so the Romani tradition and Hungarian folk magic was also there. Jewish mysticism from my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was also incorporated into my practice. I can't take those things out. The study of Buddhism and Hinduism, has made my life's philosophy and Advaita Vedanta philosophy. I can't separate that from my magic. And I think at first I thought, oh, so I should just explain that to people so that they understand why, and why the affinities I have for African traditional religion, for example. And some people got confused in the first course because they couldn't understand how I could tell everybody with absolute certainty that I have zero use for religion and near zero respect for religion, but also feel that I will defend everybody's right to practice the religion that calls or speaks to them. And if that was the case, then why do I work with the quote unquote gods and goddesses? And so that was another realization point for me, was the reason that's so easy for me is because I grew up in a family that understood and kind of lived the fact that magic was something that we did with every breath. So we know that there were some people that came into the original course, many of whom are not with us, not with the platform, and not with Inner Alchemy at all anymore, who were expecting to learn Stregoneria because they thought that was a particular path, that was an initiatory, structured, dogmatic path. And so, we do this, with Stregoneria, but, Wicca does this. And what they realized was Stregoneria is simply the word for witchcraft. And that we didn't even use it in our tradition. Most of my family, with a few of the younger cousins being the exception, and myself, still don't even use that word. We just talk about it's our way. And the reason we do that, if you stop to think about it, imagine neo-pagans, the majority of them, saying that they practice Wicca. Wicca for them is a religion. So it is a thing that they do in a worshipful space, in a devotional space, in a ritual space. And so it makes sense that they're practicing Wicca on Tuesday nights with their coven, or at 9 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed, and they set up their little altar and they do all of the ritual stuff. For us, that was just the ritual stuff. And so some of the family, and when I was younger, we attended Boschetti, the groves, and we did the ritual stuff and we did the devotional stuff. Now, we were never quite religious about it. We were more devotional about it, because if you're working with Diana and Dianos, or Tana and Tanus, as allies, imagine you had a family member who, like we'll say a great grandmother, and she was a sage, and she was an amazing cook and had the most beautiful house, and she was the rich one. When you're little, you might kind of worship her, like she's like the goddess to you. But then as you get older, you get to go over her house more often, and you get your own wheels, and you can go over and see her and help in the yard, and you're helping her plant tomatoes, and you're making gravy on Sunday. You stop worshiping her and you cultivate an actual relationship with her. She becomes a working ally in your life. And so that worship side goes away. So to me, that's the role that religion plays. It gives us a means of cultivating a relationship. And once you cultivate, and Saint Teresa of Avila, by the way, apparently agreed. We know that she was an esoteric practitioner, and she said the purpose of the church ought to be to bring you to that place of pure ecstasy. And once it's taken you to that shore, it's like a beautiful boat that takes you to the shore of pure ecstasy. And once you get there, you should burn that boat. Because why would you want to go back to the shore where you had where you were separated? And so this course then will become for nearly everybody, I think everybody tonight, it will become what each one of you has said that you hope it becomes. It is going to be that practicum, that rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, finding your particular path. See, in the first course, if you go back and listen to it, and this is what I encourage you to do, watch the entire first class, and all of you that are here tonight, that are watching this in May of 2021 or before, we'll say June or July of 2021, you have the original, or what we call the legacy course classroom. So it'll say Stregoneria 101 2020. You can go into that course now and you can jump around out of order. You could take classes, watch the video playbacks out of order all day long. And I encourage everybody to do that, because as you're doing this program, the Beyond Stregoneria course, some of that other stuff's going to make different sense for you. It's going to be an aha moment. You're going to hear things in a different way than you heard them before. And that's how life would have been if you grew up in a Strega family. The stories that you heard when you were little, you understood them that way. And then as you get a little bit older, you understand them in a different way. And then you get to be an adult and you're sitting around the table and you see the practical version of it. So the romanticized version of our practice as being like the craft, which was released 25 years ago today. So the neo-pagans are going out of their mind. Woohoo, light as a board, dumb as a feather, whatever the thing is, stiff as a board, light as a feather. 25 years ago was when the problems really started to get worse, in my opinion, because we released to this world this romanticized version of what our practice is. And our practice, those of us that are here that have been practicing for any length of time, we know, P.S., it's never like any of that. It's much more like practical magic. It's midnight margaritas, and it's being out in the garden, and it's dealing with relationship issues and our relationship to society and all of that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we learned in the 101 course, but we're going to not only make it practical, but we're going to find what makes it practical for each and every one of us. And that's going to mean, as somebody else said, kind of connecting with one another and finding, as Melissa said, finding those synchronicities. As we discovered this week, there was something that I was going to ask Nikki today permission for to talk to Melissa about, because my benefit of being in the role that I'm in as the cult leader, and that's an inside joke that we're a community, we're a family. Somebody who's no longer with us decided to take, or two somebodies decided to take to Facebook and talk about how this is a cult. We would be the worst cult on the planet if we were a cult. We're doing it completely wrong. But I have the benefit of talking to all of you sometimes in a more personal and private way with things that you share just with me. And I'm grateful and honored for that. And so I was going to ask Nikki for permission to tell Melissa something where there was some intersectionality there. And the day that I made that decision and wrote the note down, Melissa sent me an email and essentially told me the very thing that I was going, the very point of intersectionality, and said, no, by the way, Nikki also has this connection here. So it went and so I answered Melissa's question. And it was stuff that I was planning to talk to Nikki about today anyway. So those kind of intersectionalities exist all over the place in this group in amazing ways. And so I want to just kind of as like the big brother say to everybody, don't feel because I've said that, don't go looking for them, don't go hunting for, don't get obsessed, because some of us have a tendency to get obsessed. I understand that firsthand. When I go on a mission, now that's all I can think about. I want to find out where the intersectionalities are. Don't do it. Don't try to impress one another. Continue to be exactly as you've been in the first course. Be yourselves. the intersectionalities will make themselves known organically in this platform, in this course, because this is all about having those adult conversations. After this week, it will be a lot more conversational. The types of information I share in terms of quote unquote lecture may not even really be a lecture. It might be that we talk about a particular spell that we do. And so I'm showing you how we do the spell. And so we'll take that point next. If I teach you how to do a spell, it's teaching you how it's done in either my tradition or in the Italian tradition. Usually in this particular course, it's going to be in my tradition. I'm going to teach you what I really do. I'm not going to teach you theoretically what can be done. There are lots of books on Amazon if you want to learn theoretical ways of doing a spell. I'm going to show you things that I've actually experienced, that I've tried, that I know work. And so they may not always be 100% Italian, because when I work my craft, I draw on all of the generous teachings that I've received. And so some of it may come from the Hindu tradition, some of it may come from esoteric Buddhism, some of it may come from African traditional religions. And but don't get, for those of you that are looking for cultural connection and for ancestral connection, I want you to think about this. And this is why sometimes when you hear something, and I suggest that you do something, you may feel resistance and say, well, this doesn't sound very Italian, I'm not going to do it. And then you do it and it opens the door. And this has happened with several people, and they're not people that I had the presence of mind to ask for permission to tell their whole story. But Nikki and I talked about this earlier. I was telling this story, how there may be a practice that comes from the Buddhist tradition. All right. So I'm going to ask right now, Nikki and Melissa, do I have permission to tell where your people are from? Okay. So both of them are from Lucania, and it's the role that the people that are from that region in Italy, and depending on what era we talk about, sometimes it wasn't even Italy, but that part of the world have a very strong connection to the Hellenist and the Hellenistic culture. They're very Greek in their thing. In Italian, we have an expression where we say, when it comes to Greeks and Italians, same race, same face, which means we're the same culture that just happened to be on two different islands. So let's talk about what this course is. Very heavily Siciliano, and naturally, because that's the majority of my genetic makeup, my heritage. So Sicilia at one point in ancient history was predominantly Basque and African inspired. So you look at the architecture in Sicilia, the most ancient architecture you see that has survived is going to look very much like what you find in Tunisia, in the Canary Islands, in some parts of Spain, and also surprisingly to some people, very Gaelic. So when we talk about Celtic traditions, the Sicilian tradition is very Celtic inspired. That's why there's a lot of, you heard Jim talk about a lot of the synergy between our folk magic practices and the Appalachian folk magic practices. That's because the Appalachian folk magic practices drew on a lot of Celtic wisdom that was brought here to this country. That was ancient Sicilia, and then the people from Lucania came into Sicilia, and they brought with them the Greek experience, the Greek tradition, the Greek philosophy. But they did more than just bring the Greek, because those same people would have interacted in Alexandria where they got to come in contact with Egyptian mythos and philosophy and Hermeticism and things like that. So then that begins to inspire the way that Cecilia happened. And if we look at the writings in ancient Alexandria, and I promise I will not be an anthropologist through the rest of this course, but this just sets the stage for us all. Well, I won't promise that there will probably be moments. But in ancient Alexandria, we also find writings about the healers that, mythical characters or mythical stories, I should say, about possibly live characters like Rabbi Jesus, when his family left and supposedly went into Egypt, he would have been exposed to the healers in Alexandria. And those healers were called therapeutae. And the therapeutae were Buddhist monks. So now those people that came from Lucania are bringing back not just Egyptian mythology, but also Buddhist mythology. And so the point of that story is that in Sicilian folk magic, which then inspired Italian folk magic, especially in the Southern Kingdom, in the southern part of Italy, there was no teasing out all of the other places that cultures drew from. And we could say the same exact thing about everywhere else in the world. My very dear friend, Teresa Slawinski, does a brilliant series on Polish folk magic. And it's, she just smiles because she says, we don't even know whether this was inspired by the Persian tradition or the Persian tradition was inspired by us and the Romani tradition. And so the thing I ask of everybody in this class is that my greatest hope is that we can erase the lines in the sand, because you'll make yourself nuts if you try to figure out which came first, because there is no way of knowing. Like when there is a way of knowing, when we can prove it, I'll tell you this was inspired by the Persian tradition. Cecilia, you hear Andrea and I talk all the time about how similar Andrea's tradition between her two sides of her family are. And how, some of the rituals that both sides of the family, the Persian and the Italian, well, that's because in Sicilia, the Persian tradition, was very much interwoven into life in Sicily. And when you go there, you see the architecture, you see some of the, some of the beautiful mosque-like structures and actually some places that are residences now that used to be mosques that they're rediscovering. And so let's just stop trying to tease that out and figure that out. Just keep in mind that religion and the magical practice in our ancestors' lives. And so this is what I was going to say before I go there. So you may do something that has a little bit more of a Buddhist feel to it. Today we were talking about working with, like, my grandmother would start every ritual. Now, my grandmother had no connection to Hindus or Buddhists whatsoever, and my grandmother was a bit of what you would have to say low-key racist. No, I wouldn't even say low-key. We know she's listening. But she was kind of racist. And so she would refer, the next neighborhood in Philadelphia over from ours was a predominantly Indian neighborhood. And so she would refer to the convenience store in their neighborhood on their block as the Haji Mart. So I could be absolutely certain that there weren't a whole lot of Indians who were my grandmother's friends, and with good reason. But somebody at some point gave my grandmother a little Ganesha, which is right over my finger right there. There's my little tiny Ganesha Morty, and told my grandmother, before you do any of your magic, always ask Ganesh to remove the obstacles. And my grandmother, when I don't know when, she never told me what age she was when she started doing that, but it was many, many, many years. That's a very old piece. And she said, just before you sit down, before you're going to do a ritual, you just say, Lord Ganesha, take away any obstacles that'll get in the way of this working. And she did it I've done it from the time I was about 7 or 8 years old. And then when I started to study Hinduism and I moved into the ashram, I was like, oh my God, this is a Hindu practice. How is she starting her Italian ritual with the first thing that we do in any puja, in any esoteric working in Hinduism? And the answer was because you never know where those traditions got influenced from outside people. So it may be that there's an ancestor for one of you, having heard that particular story tonight, and now know that you can start any ritual you're going to do by saying, Lord Ganesha, take away any obstacle that stands in the way. By connecting with that little bit of wisdom, it may be that one of your ancestors who came from that tradition, because let's remember, none of our ancestors necessarily stayed in one place. So your great-great-great-grandmother might have been one of those people who went with the merchants into Tibet or into China or Japan. And they might have lived in Japan, but they were Italian. Michael lived in Japan. He's not Japanese, but his culture, you could take a shot in the dark that there is some Japanese culture that has made its way into Michael's spirituality and his magical practice and his worldview. So all of these things, I just want us to I want to encourage everybody to keep an open mind, because these could be keys that unlock doors to ancestors where the door was closed before, where we didn't have any common thread. So this whole course is going to be about exploring ways to deepen our relationships with the ancestors, with the spirits of the land, spirits of place, spirits of time, spirits of tribe, and the ancient ones. So you can call the ancient ones whatever you want. If you're religious, call them gods and goddesses. If you're agnostic, just call them the ancient ones. If you believe, as I was taught, that they are our ancestors, they are physically our ancestors, they're our ancestors. Same thing with plants. In the African traditional religions that inspired our tradition, we look at the plants as being our greatest of ancestors, because if were the plants not here, humanity wouldn't be here. And so we're going to be unlocking a lot of these things. I will also say that that I encourage everybody. The timing for starting this course was specific. And this will make more sense over the next 30 days outside of the class. Watch my Facebook wall, because this year I'm doing something that I've done every year, except this year I'm doing some things that are making me just about shit my pants, because I made a promise to one of my mentors outside of our tradition, was a beautiful, incredible man by the name of Eddie Basinski, who was a magic practitioner in New York, the one of the partners in the Magical Child, and with whom I had a very, very close relationship. That for the sake of, it was a very close relationship. I was 16 at the time. I initiated that relationship. In depending on your view, there may have been some things that may have crossed the line at a moment or two, but I was very mature at 16, and so we explored some aspects of magic that I've never explored with anybody else in my life. And I made a commitment during one of these rituals that Eddie was teaching me, and it was really expanding my worldview, because my aunts and everybody would look down their nose at Wicca because of how superficial it tends to be, and because of the lies that Gerald Gardner told that everybody else bought into, the nonsense about being initiated into by a coven that didn't exist, and all of this. And she particularly had agita when she would talk about people like Alexander's. And so, being the rebellious 16-year-old, what do? If you're told that these are horrible people, the first thing you want to do is connect to those horrible people. And what I found was, and especially since somebody who was like an uncle and a cousin to our family was Dr. Leo Martello, who like Raven Gramasi and Lori Bruno would like you to believe was teaching Stregoneria, which he would never have done because he was from that age group that you just never did that. So what he did in order to appease people was to create a version of Wicca with Italian herbs and seasonings on it and present it as the way of the Strega, which was, he did not say it was Stregoneria. He just said it was the way of the witch. Leo being gay and my being a 16-year-old queer kid, I wanted to experience these because I just figured, well, if Leo's gay and he's a member of Wicca with one C, the New York organization that was so pro LGBTQ, so pro feminist, so second wave feminism. I thought, I want to meet these people, and they can't all be bad, and they weren't all bad, and they were some of those people I'm still friends with to this day. Many of them are on Facebook. Some of them are really up there in years. But they're people who you've seen me interact with on Facebook that I adore. They're like elders outside of my tradition, and they're elders who got it right, who didn't get caught up in pop culture paganism, who's it just happens to be their religion and their tradition, and they serve the world in beautiful ways. So by opening myself to those kinds of experiences, I experienced some of their ritual. And so Eddie had me join him in this ritual. And I made a promise because there was a connection in my life to something that Eddie recognized as having roots in my African ancestors' heritage. And may have actually even influenced my dating life thereafter, because I with two exceptions in 40 years, there's I've dated two white boys in 40 years. Most of them have been African or Afro-Caribbean men. And so that had another major influence in my magical practice, because I didn't date anybody who wasn't a practitioner until 13 years ago, when I brought my first Muggle into my heart. But I made this commitment that I will keep my word about so the commitment was made when I was 16. When I was raped in 1983, this story took a turn, and that made me shut down and think that I was never going to be able to keep that commitment, that I would do it in the next life or whatever, there was just no way that I could publicly talk about it. There was just no way that I could carry it out, that I could fulfill what I promised to do, because things changed in my life on May 10th, 1983, forever. And on November 19th, they changed 1983 even more, because that's when we found out that the four men who raped and beat me also infected me with AIDS, although it was called GRID back then. So I just thought these things were never going to come to light, were never going to be part of what I taught or did in the world. And in the last couple of weeks, so many things shifted and changed. And then last night in our group conversation, when I had been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks that, one of the most humble people that we have on our faculty, who people might not realize how much they're doing for all of us in the background, who listens and then responds from their heart magically to all of us. And how I was determined that this year I'm embarrassing them and I apologize, that I was going to make them step into the spotlight so that people could recognize their contributions. And that was Dominic started this conversation that by the time we were done with last night's session, so watch last night's session, I was shaking. I sat there. I usually finish up and I have to pee and I have to go eat on Sunday nights. I sat there and watched the video. When the video processes, all you're seeing is a bar go across the screen. There's nothing to watch. That's why I go pee and go eat. I sat there and watched the bar process because I was so stunned at a conversation that unfolded that was confirmation for me in a powerful way and so cathartic. And I just sat there and just big old crybaby thing and Kodak moment. And so this May, unlike most Mays when I simply talk about different aspects of the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine, this May is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little more personal and it's going to be a little more raw. And so I encourage you to check out the stuff I post every day on my Facebook wall about these aspects of the Divine Mother, because a big focus in what we're doing. And so the other little thing that kind of was my confirmation, that was the major confirmation last night. And then like 2 weeks ago, I was home by myself and bored and may or may not have been a little stoned. And I turned on a show called that I would have never watched otherwise. It looked very teeny bopper, called Fate. That was based on kids' book, teenage books. And I watched this show and it confirmed, because I had this outline for what I was going to cover in the next 13 months. And they went there in the show where we actually learn one of the things in the Italian tradition that you learn or identify very often. And anybody who's read Andrea's books will recognize this from Andrea's books, is that you recognize that outside of astrology, outside of all of these other parts of the esoteric world where you're identified, where like your sun sign or your moon sign are identified with elements, in the Italian, the Sicilian tradition, we are also identified with the element that in our words we say that's on you. So that element of water is on you, that element of fire is on you, that element of air or earth is on you, and ether runs through us all. But one of those four elements is on each and every one of us. And when that's identified, usually when you're 6 years old, when you're, quote unquote, kind of initiated, when you're first brought into the family tradition, the elders recognize that in you. And so they teach you how to work with that element. And so part of what we're going to be doing over the next 13 months is also learning how to work with the element that shows up in our life, that whispers in our ear, that appears in our dream, that's always just in our peripheral vision, because that will play a major role in unlocking lots of other things for you, including a lot of the stuff the ancestors are waiting to do in your life for you, that is between you and them, not necessarily stuff that you would want to share with other people because you don't want to unduly influence people. That's why if it sounds like I'm being a little bit vague, I'm being a little bit vague. That's why I never talked about what element is mine until Nicole Kincaid, who will hopefully be an adjunct instructor in the platform, outed me on a show recently and said, "Oh yeah, you're all about fire. That's you from the get-go. I knew it from the minute I met you, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, okay, so there goes that secret. But we're going to learn how to work with those things. We're going to learn in the next 13 months, we're going to explore together what your unique magical practice looks like. Because and that's why that's why we tease for Lori and Rosie, especially, who may not know this yet. You may not have watched this module yet. The reason that we refer to the Real Housewives of Stregoneria is because at one point we were talking about how I will never be like the pop culture witches like Lori Cabot and Alex Sanders. And, I'm not initiating anybody into the Salvato lineage because I believe that sort of thing is frankly bullshit, egocentric, and cultural appropriation, because this is not a gurukul system where you're actually being initiated into a real lineage. all they're doing is saying, give me all your money and I'll teach you what I know. You know, and then you get to wear tartan plaid and you know, this costume or that costume. And so we've had people who've actually left the course because they thought they were going to get a costume. And so look on my Facebook wall tonight. I chose the costume that we're going that our witches will wear. She's right out of Rocky Horror. But and if you don't want to wear it, you don't have to. But I said, okay, so what we'll be the Real Housewives of Stregoneria. And we had t-shirts made, and there's merch in the, if you go to itteralchemy.online, there's all kinds of merch in the merch shop that really is just being playful and stupid, but at the same time saying, yeah, that's more like who we are. Like we're not these prissy little, you know, Salem witches. Well, except for Annette, who actually is related to a Salem witch historically and you know, genetically. Her DNA and her family tree proves that. But we're more like the Real Housewives of South Jersey. We in more ways than one. and so in this next year, lots of things are going to happen. One, sometime in June, we're having a get together here at in my neighborhood, where you know, we won't all fit in my little apartment, but you'll all be welcome to come into my apartment. But we'll spend most of our time in the clubhouse here in the community, making a big feast. But we'll also be doing something that's how I'm going to end tonight's session, because I want this imagery to be in your mind. When I started the course, my idea was that I would first paint the picture of how our ancient ancestors were in matriarchal societies, and how the patriarchy in and around 300 of the Common Era, you know, disguised as the Roman Church, but really the Roman Empire, which created the mythos of the Roman Church, would then crush the matriarchal societies, calling them pagan, calling the practitioners witches, calling you know, the midwives and the medicine women and men, you know, satanic or diabolical or things like that. And so I thought I would paint that picture and talk about how we need to dismantle the patriarchy. And then one of our former instructors went on a bit of a bipolar rant, saying you can't, you know, somebody in our class discussed or took back the word bitch and said, I'm reclaiming the word bitch for myself. And this other person, this former instructor, was telling me, thank goodness, in advance, because it would have been a much uglier scene if they actually tried to attack somebody in this community, that they were going to basically attack that person. They were going to tell them off and tell them, how dare you say that you're going to reclaim the word bitch. Well, it was really odd to me that a person could be in a place in their lives where they identify as non-binary or queer, gender queer, and say that the construct of male and female doesn't work for them anymore, as it doesn't work for me, and I believe probably doesn't work for the person who reclaimed the word for themselves, not for anybody else. Just to be clear, nobody was making proclamations that we all had to be bitches. This was a person saying out of vulnerability, I'm reclaiming that word. I'm taking back the power. And I'm proud to say I'm a bitch, as am I. And you can't say that the gender paradigm doesn't work anymore and then say that person can't do it because they look like a boy. Sorry, then you're just saying you buy into gender binary constructs, because you who look like a girl-ish have the right to tell somebody who looks like a boy, in your opinion, that they don't have the right to use a word to identify themselves. So that's never going to fly in this community. And I may be, and I reclaim that word for myself because I am a bitch, and nobody comes from my family, and this is my family. And so we don't attack one another here. And so that experience, like while it looked like drama to everybody else, because I had to tell the person, don't, please do me a favor, don't come back to finish teaching your class, you're done, and I'm done with you. You know, you're going into a plastic baggie in the freezer full of yellow ice cubes, basta. And that looked like drama. But what it really was at the end of the day, when I took a breath, maybe smoked a bowl or six, was that I started to realize that it wasn't enough to talk about the matriarchy being oppressed by the patriarchy and our needing to dismantle the patriarchy. And so I sat with the mother and the mothers, the archetypal big M mother that I work with, and all of the mothers in their various personalities that I work with, and said, so what do we do with this? Because on one hand, I'll always love the person who's no longer with us. And I will always pray and hope and desire that they get professional help, because they deserve it. Because at the end of the day, they were a good person behaving badly. They were not a bad person. And I would defend them the same way I defended the person that they were going to attack, because they're a good person, period. And so in working with the mothers and sitting with the mothers, two things happened. One was that the mothers said, well, maybe it's time that you start to talk about something that you kind of know in your heart, but you've never really put into words, because you're afraid of where it's going to land with people. And that is that the archetypal mother and the archetypal father, the matriarchy needs to go away too, because it's done its job. But the matriarchy and patriarchy are now, we're at an inflection point in society, in the cosmos, and the divine feminine and divine masculine have come together to do something they have never done at any time in the past. We all know the story of Diana and Dianus coming together and creating Aradia. What's about to happen now is a similar story. They don't necessarily have to be brother and sister if that kind of creeps you out. But the divine masculine and divine feminine are coming together, but they're now creating the new archetype, the new supreme archetype, if you want, that is genderless, that is more like what our ancient ancestors would think of as Olodumare, the creator, the prime, the 0 point, the source itself. And that source is neither male or female, and both male and female. And so the cosmos is giving birth to the new energy, the new expression that, if you think about it, our practice and our community really is. It's the coming together of all those different energies. And then the second thing that the mother said was, you know, in order to do that, you're also going to have to come to terms with that one aspect of yourself that has remained unresolved because you hide it from the rest of the world. And I hide that aspect of myself. If I turn the camera, I don't know if the camera will show clearly enough, so I'll not do it. But on the wall next to me that shows up in so many of my videos, there is there are sketches that I did of three of the mothers. There's the mother that represents both Aset, Isis, and the Blessed Virgin of Montevergine, and the mother of the rivers, and the mother of the oceans, in their archetypal forms, and how I see them, how I experience them. I'm also not a really great artist, so they're very, very primitive pictures, but they really speak to me, and I've shared them all over my Facebook. They'll also make their appearance this month in some of the things that I share, but I've hidden behind them, particularly behind Yamaya, because she is like the hardest one to not like, and because she is also the opposite element of what I was hiding. And so the mother said, if you're going to do this and you're really going to serve, because this class is not about me, and it's not to serve me, and we've already talked about my tradition. My tradition is done. Now it's me sharing some of the things from my tradition, the actual practical stuff. This is what I do for this. This is what I do for this. This is how this is why I do this for this. This is why I do this kind of spell. You know, and that's going to include and actually start with some of the more wrathful stuff that we do, that we didn't cover in 101 because nobody was ready for it yet, because I didn't want somebody thinking that when we do baneful magic or more wrathful magic, that we do it out of spite. We never do it to harm another person. The ice cubes in the freezer are there are much more wrathful things I could do, theoretically, that I would never do, because if I believe in essential unity and I believe that we are all part of that one tapestry, then why would I want to burn a hole in the tapestry? You know, why would I? Now, I may want that part of the tapestry that's orange and lives at Mar-a-Lago to maybe have a really big shit stain covering it up forever, but I'm not going to burn a hole in it. Because if there was ever a use for that orange shit stain, we could wash it. We could wash the tapestry and it's still intact. And if you ever burn a hole in a tapestry in real life, you know what happens. It starts to fray. And that hole starts to destroy the integrity of the whole rest of the tapestry. So now we're at a point where we can be ready to talk about some of the baneful things we do, because we can understand. And there wouldn't have been, I would have had to create a make-believe story to explain why we do things that way, except that the universe said, oh, let's create a little drama. You know, the old ones said, here's what we'll do. We're going to create the situation for you before you start the class. So these two people are going to leave and they're going to be talking about your occult, and they're going to be talking about all this other stuff, talking out their ass, so that now you have an example of something to show. So this is how we deal with people like that. You know, you put them under a rock, or you put them in a, you know, an ice cube tray of piss in a plastic bag in your freezer, you know, where it's done, you know, you're done with them, and where they have to shut up because nobody's going to believe them anymore. But you're not bringing harm to them. You're actually bringing balance back to them, because eventually if you're out there lying and and nobody's listening, you're going to stop and you're going to get on with your life. You're going to focus on much more important things, like getting your own life together, healing, finding your own voice, and maybe looking at what you're doing that might be kind of culty itself, and saying, kind of interesting that I called them a cult, and here I am creating the temple of vaginal grievance. Maybe I should look at that and look at my motivation and what's making me do that instead. So that's going to be where we lead, and it's going to, like everything else, you know, with people like Dominic and Jim and Andrea, who, by the way, did ask me to mention to everyone that for at least from now until September, because of stuff that's happening in her family business, that nothing bad, all good and positive and really exciting things, but that are going to take a lot of her energy, plus the fact that school's starting to open back up, the world's starting to open back up. She has a 4-year-old. That she didn't feel like she could focus and be anything other than maybe a distraction right now in these discussions. So she wants to keep doing the much more important work of the plant ancestry course, and we don't want anybody to burn out. And so for all of you that are, you know, like I told everybody, don't make the mistake that I make. And yet I know we're all enthusiastic. So a lot of us made the mistake that I make and jumped in like 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 courses all at once. And it's exhausting. And so I'm encouraging the faculty members and the students in the platform and the members of our community to know we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. So take these things at a gentle pace. There are some people who went through a 26 module program in like 11 weeks because they wanted to get it done because they wanted to be in this class. And I let that happen this time but it isn't going to happen from this point on. This will become a perpetual class. So there will be people who we might be on week 10, and some people may come in. Andrea thinks that by the end of the summer, she'll be able to make that time. Her parents will have moved their store, and all of the incredible stuff that's happening will be resolved by then, so that she'll have some free time. And then, wherever she walks back in, or some other folks that finish the Stregoneria 101 course walk in, they're going to be able to walk in. This isn't going to be like the original course, each module built on the previous one. This is going to be Sunday dinners, sitting around having macaroni, having the discussion, sitting, having a glass of wine. Feel free, for that reason, that on Monday nights, you want to have a glass of wine, you want to have a scotch, whatever, feel free to do that, because these aren't going to be the kinds of things where you have to take meticulous notes, because if I'm teaching you how to do a spell, there's going to be a PDF or a PowerPoint that walks you through that spell. And because you're going to be discovering your own DNA ancestry in this, you're going to make your spell your spell. And so the only thing that I'll ask, and I went 2 minutes over, I apologize, is that when you discover your way, feel free to share it with one another, but stay out of the mindset that that your way is better than anybody else's, because my way isn't going to be better than your way, and your way is not going to be better than the next person's way. And somebody who just comes in, just gets started and gets an inspiration that they can do it their way. There are some things that in the 101 course, I had to put my foot down and say, nope, that's not Stregoneria. That's Wicca, or or you're confusing the religion with the practice, or you're confusing Roman practices in the old religion with practices of witchcraft. So somebody on YouTube recently went through that. In this second part, there is no wrong answer. So you can't do any of what we're going to be doing wrong. Maybe the way that you do it doesn't get you the result that you want, but here's a newsflash: that happens for me all the time. That happens for people who've been practicing for 70 years all the time. You do something, you don't get the outcome that you want, so you tweak what you're doing, and you tweak your mindset, and you tweak the intention, and you do that until you get the result. And when you get the result, then you learn, okay, so that's how I deal with this situation. And that's how I bend things to my will. That's all our practice is. That's why they call it a practice, is because it's something that's ever evolving, ever finding new expression. And so you're going to find that every one of the courses, particularly the courses that Jim's teaching and Andrea is teaching, that there's going to be interweaving places where the courses that Dominic is teaching are going to interweave, places where the courses in Hoodoo and Appalachian folk magic that Adam teaches already interweave with what Jim teaches, and already interweave with some of the African traditional religion and Afro-Caribbean traditions that Dominic teaches, and Stregoneria. So don't get caught up in trying to keep it all straight. From this point on, you want to be able to fluidly move in between those things, and think of the school, no longer think of the school as a bunch of courses. Think of us as like the world's first magical library. Like, we're almost rebuilding the Library of Alexandria in a really microcosm kind of way. I'm not being, that didn't mean to sound as egotistical as it was, but that's kind of like what I see happening. Is we're building this resource center. And so you may not find you may find yourself listening to something I'm teaching and saying, I don't have that situation going on, but I have something similar to that going on. And I remember Jim teaching something in the Nourishing Tradition course that talked about an herb. Let me go back in there and go back to that module. And then you're going to find there's this synergy that, I swear to you, we probably could not have made all of this work together as perfectly as it does intentionally if we tried. I don't talk to Dominic about what he's going to teach in his class. I don't talk to Jim what he's going to teach in his class. I'm teach to Andrea with the folk magic, the Catholic conjure piece that's coming with Michael and Dominic. We're not having conversations about cover this and cover that, because by just letting it come from the practitioner themselves, the synergy is better than anything any of us could have put together. And you'll find that's going to have, I already see it in the big picture in all of you, that it's happening in all of you. The growth that I've seen in everybody that's in this room tonight and the ones that'll be watching on replay has been humbling and astounding. It's not, there's supposed to be growth pains. It's supposed to be uncomfortable sometimes. Trust me, it's uncomfortable for me teaching it sometimes. Start pay attention to what happens around the 10th. We'll see what happens. Talk about uncomfortable. You want to see me squirm? May 10th, and probably the 11th and 12th and 13th and all the days leading up to May 10th, as I shit my pants over and over again about how am I gonna deal with that major day and keep my vow that I made in a ritual, that I've been doing kind of on the QT. It's almost like a coming out moment for me. And let yourself be vulnerable, because there are not just me and not just the faculty members. You guys are here for one another, and you've already proven it, a million times to Sunday. So let yourself be vulnerable. And when something hurts, let us know, let somebody in the community know that it hurts. You don't have to, if you don't feel like you can tell me, and I'll leave it with that. If there's anything that I do that you don't like, come to me and tell me you don't like it. Don't whine behind my back and bitch, or I'm going to get all Dolly Parton and Best Little Whorehouse and say, come tell me to my face, and then go upstairs and pack your bags and pack. Because that's the only thing you could do to piss me off is act like 8th grade schoolgirls or schoolboys. I'm not going to do everything your way and to your satisfaction. And sometimes I'm going to fuck up, and sometimes I'm going to do things that unintentionally hurt you or piss you off. Tell me. If you want the class to be better, tell me that could have been done better. The things that I will never do is I will never disclose anything about any of you that you didn't disclose publicly. You have my word on that. I will never let anybody else do that either. That I will be an asshole if somebody else tries to attack somebody else. And if somebody takes a battle if somebody doesn't like something I do and they decide they're going to try to mess with me or any one of you publicly, as you saw happen with another individual from here in a public forum, start the battle at a public forum. The battle will end in a public forum, and it won't be pretty. Other than that, I hope everybody knows I love and adore every single one of you, honestly and truly, or you wouldn't be here, because this isn't an open class. So I could have said no to anybody, and did say no to a couple people, but not because I didn't love them. They will be here. They'll just be here a little bit later because they still need some time to go through the material, because they tried to get 26 modules done in 11 weeks. And I'm like, no, give yourself, you couldn't even do the practice. I couldn't even write the material in 11 weeks. So give yourself some time. You got to let yourself kind of get uncomfortable in that stuff, because they thought, oh, this will be easier because this is just going to be spells. Look, go take Lori Cabot's class if all you want to do is spells, because we're not just going to be doing spells here. We're going to be doing real practical stuff, everyday stuff, because your practice of Stregoneria begins with the first breath you take each day and the last breath you take before that first breath each day. It's all magic. It's all the practice. And so that's going to include the mundane as well as the mystical. And I think it's going to be an amazing year. And so I'm really grateful to have each one of you here. I definitely believe that I can. I didn't think that, I thought there were going to be some unreasonable expectations. Honestly, I really expected some at least out there kind of stuff, but you guys have totally reasonable and achievable expectations. not just for me, but I think from the rest of the faculty as well. And I know we're going to deliver. So we got 5 minutes left to the hour and a half. Anything anybody else want to add? You can't say anything mushy because I'm like this. My meds are due in 5 minutes. So with Parkinson's and the seizures, if you say mushy stuff at this moment, I'll cry, and I got to have pizza when I'm done. So no making me cry. And don't raise your hand. I'm not going to, there's too many people on the screen. Annette, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. No, I wanted to say thank you also. And just that something you said when you were talking about, I made a little note so I forgot. When you were talking about the, just the idea that that like sort of gender morphing concept of like, that's dissolving and like in progress. And I had the memory of like, how perfect is this? Because growing up with my, Italian off the boat mother and a Catholic mother at that, she would literally correct, anytime I would come home from religious instruction class in my, American, Irish, nun, Catholic religion class on Wednesdays after school. And she would continually and consistently correct the idea that like a man, because I had issue with like God as a man imagery. And she always would like, God has no gender. God's just there. And I was like, it never really occurred to me to think, where did she get that from?
Good for you.
And as you're saying that, I was like, this is some like ancient Italian wisdom shit. Like, and so I was just like, that was just in there for her. And it came from where it came from. And like, that was easy for her to accept with being born in 1948. That's a little radical for a Catholic, So I was just like sharing that because I said, that's in there. And I
Well,
felt
being
like,
born in 1948, she was also born at a time when our skin had not yet lightened. So think about that. We know where the people came from that inhabited Sicily. So they were a little bit closer to the older stories. They understood that the divine or the first cause couldn't possibly have been engendered. That anthropomorphizing happened later. Anyone else? Just jump in.
I think
Yeah,
and that came up in the discussion last night when I was talking about the Orishas and the creator being genderless. And I kept saying he, and that's like, from the Roman Catholic background of saying the Our Father. And, it's ingrained. And even in the practices, we always say, oh, Papa Dios or something like that. But that's a Spaniard or a Portuguese concept that was grafted onto the religion. The creator is supposed to be genderless. And even the Orishas themselves are switch genders all the time. And just to comment on those connections, like one of those connections happened organically yesterday between me and Francesca. Like, and I know she's the opposite element magically of mine. And we were just kind of like, I don't know, we just had this beautiful discussion with each other. And that was a really amazing conversation last night that we had.
I'll say that was breathtaking to watch. And in case you guys don't know where to find that in the platform, it's in, if you go into the groups, that's not a class. So that's an open discussion. In groups, there's a group that's called Community Live Discussions. And you'll find all of the archives in there, some really good stuff. But last night was particularly breathtaking. And I had no expectations for last night. I thought, it's first weeks of spring, really first really beautiful Sunday we've had, and there were only 4 of us in the room, so I was like, how much will be done in like 20 minutes? We didn't go 20 minutes. All right, guys, well, it is 9:30 on the dot. Tamara, did you have something to say? Or you were waving, saying goodbye. All right, I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. This will, I have got to eat and take my meds. So tonight's replay will probably take about an hour and a half before I get it uploaded. But it'll be in the system. And Lori and Rosie, it was great to have you here live. for the first time. We'll look forward, hopefully we will see much more of you. And oh, and look at some of you show-offs who actually found, I always wanted to do that. Look, we get to do these reactions. I always think about it after we're already gone, and it doesn't work when you're trying to do it by yourself. Well, that's called something else. But I'm gonna go and eat. You guys go and take care of yourselves. Know that you're loved, and give me about an hour and a half, and the replay will be up. And next, so there isn't a session next week. It's the following week. These will be every other week, but I will try sometime in the course of next week to get that as quickly as I can, to get the topic and the little presentation for 2 weeks from Monday up on the site. All right, take care, everybody. Good night.